Welcome. It's good to see all of you here today, and we're glad to have you with us. We've envisioned today as a time when we're going to share some information with you, but we've envisioned this in many ways as an informal time. We do have information to share with you, but we hope that we will present it in a way in which it is helpful but not terribly intimidating. So I'm Robyn Sekula. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the Presbyterian Foundation. And I have with me today Phil Beck, who is the pastor of First United Presbyterian Church in Tarentum, Pennsylvania. I deeply appreciate Phil teaching me how to correctly say the name of this town. Did I get it correct?
That is correct.
Good. I worked on that.
Good.
So I got to know Phil a few years ago when I first came to the foundation. I wanted to do a webinar about how churches can use Giving Tuesday. And so I started looking at what churches we worked with that were bringing in a fair amount of money on Giving Tuesday and who that was. And Phil's church popped to the top of the list when I pulled the numbers. So I started looking at the church and trying to figure out if there was anything particularly extraordinary or unusual about Phil's church that might be why they were bringing in the amount of money they were. And there wasn't anybody named Rockefeller in the pews or anything like that. So I thought Phil's story and his experience would be a good example for how other churches can use his information. So that's why Phil's with us today. His church has done just a great job with it. And I think there are many lessons that can be learned that can be passed along. So we're going to start then with what we should always start with, some theology and devotional time in which we're going to talk about the theology of Giving Tuesday. And you may find this helpful as you plan your own stewardship plans for this fall and also as you make your plans for Giving Tuesday. So Phil, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Great. Thanks, Robyn. And I think Robyn's also going to share a screen at some point in time with a couple slides.
I am.
That will help us out with this journey. Again, I'm Phil Beck, pastor of First United Presbyterian Church in Tarentum. I've actually been there for now I'm working on my 21st year. So I came in 2001. So that gives you a little bit more heads up about things as well. And so I just want to open us with a little prayer, and then I want to share some scripture and some sort of philosophy about where we're going as well. So why don't we pray? Lord God, we are grateful for the opportunities to be present with one another in these virtual means, and we ask that you open us to your way and your calling of each and every one of us, that we here in this time of discussion, opportunities to serve and to encourage those in our congregation and community to support what you are doing in this world. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. That's good. So if you look at this passage, 2 Corinthians 9, 6, 15, I'm actually not going to read all of it to you. Most of you are quite familiar with this, particularly sort of the beginning. Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. But Robyn, if you go to the next slide. Right. And so verse 12 and onwards really strikes me in this passage. We tend to lean towards the first part, and I really like this second part. It says this service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. Because of the service by which you have proved yourselves, others will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel of Christ, and for your generosity in sharing with them and with everyone else. And in their prayers for you, their hearts will go out to you because of the surpassing grace God has given you. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. And so go ahead, Robyn, go on to the next slide. So this is Henry Nouwen. He was a Roman Catholic priest. He worked with the Arch community. And if you have read some of his books, you'll find, at least for me, some very profound statements. The Beloved, The Life of the Beloved is one of his sort of most well-known one. But he actually wrote a book, or sort of a treatise almost, on the spirituality of fundraising. And I found it fascinating to read, and it's actually super helpful to me, and it's sort of been helpful to us as a congregation as we got our own stewardship, but also for Giving Tuesday. And I think that this first sentence, our first two sentences, are really super important from the perspective of the gospel. And I think that that phrase really makes a difference. From the perspective of the gospel, or the good news, fundraising is not a response to a crisis. Fundraising is first and foremost a form of ministry. It's a way of announcing our vision and inviting others to participate in our mission. And we know about sort of vision and mission, that everything sort of comes out of that and leads from our vision and then our mission as a congregation and as a people. And so if we have a vision and mission, it works with us in how we present not only Giving Tuesday, but our stewardship, and even just the overall life and ethos of our congregations. And so that vision and mission are really important. And for Giving Tuesday, that's really important as well. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in a little bit further on. But I really want to point to you that and we can take that fundraising word and change it, because sometimes we get our sort of hackles up around the word fundraising, and instead we can use some other language. But I think that it really is an interesting piece, that it's of an invitation. And so, Robyn, if you go to the next page. So fundraising is proclaiming what we believe in such a way that we offer other people an opportunity to participate with us in our vision and mission. Fundraising is precisely the opposite of begging. When we seek to raise funds, we're not saying, please, could you help us out because lately it's been hard. Rather, we are declaring we have a vision that is amazing and exciting. And so with Giving Tuesday, what we're really doing is we're trying to put out a message that this is super exciting what we're doing. Here's some of our vision and mission and ministries within our congregation, but also in our community. Don't you want to join us? Because this is an awesome opportunity to do so. We can do sort of, as a sidelight of this, we can do that sort of, times have been tough, we could really use your help. That works in stewardship sometimes, and just giving probably once. Like, the roof is bad, we need your help, we need some help in doing this, that works. But if we sort of go from crisis after crisis after crisis, soon people will get tired of that. And so we need something different that's there. And so that vision and ministry of what you're doing and sort of storytelling are really an important piece to how we go about this and how we invite. And so that in 2 Corinthians, we hear that invitation to be a part of what God is doing. And as Nouwen shares, that it's also a way for us to communicate our vision and mission. And so while, of course, we really love the dollars or the monies that come in through Giving Tuesday, it also gives us a really great opportunity to just share with the wider community all of the things that we have been doing and we do as a congregation to support our community, our congregational community, but our greater community as well. There we go. And again, as you see here, when we use that Giving Tuesday monies, or how we do it, that gift multiplies. And we really do, if we come out of this idea of not of scarcity, but of abundance, that people want to be a part of what we are doing, as a congregation, then this is an opportunity. It gives people an opportunity to really support something that they love, they want to be a part of. Most people want to give, they just need that opportunity to give, and they need something that sort of strikes them in their heart to be a part of that as well. People are willing, uh, obviously willing to give. It's just we have to give them that opportunity. And again, it's not a plea of we're penniless. It is more about what we're doing as a community of faith.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want to talk just a little bit now about what Giving Tuesday is. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit here. Giving Tuesday is only about 9 years old. It was created in 2012. It's just a really simple idea. We have Black Friday when everybody goes to the shopping malls and shopping centers and buys gifts for Christmas and the holidays. And then we started to have Cyber Monday, of course, especially, 10 years ago, this was the day that people, honestly, one of the reasons Cyber Monday is a thing and it's not Cyber Sunday is because people are back in their offices on Mondays, and that's when they tend to do a lot of their online shopping. So we had Black Friday, we had Cyber Monday, so we had all this rampant consumerism. So there began to be talk of, well, what about giving back? How can we make this a time when people think beyond giving material gifts to each other? So that's really what it came from, and it started to go from that. And really, Phil's church has been doing this for a while now, considering really how relatively new Giving Tuesday is. And what I think is particularly interesting, and I'm going to flip now. This is his church. Phil, tell us a little bit about your church. How would you describe your membership? Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So my congregation is in a small town located just north of Pittsburgh, so about 20-30 minute drive north of Pittsburgh, in one of the many small towns that are along the Allegheny River as you come north out of Pittsburgh. Tarentum itself at one point in time had about 10,000 people in the town, and now its population, like many of the towns, has diminished, and so now we have just a little less than 3,000 in our actual town, but there's lots of towns surrounding it. And our congregation is like many congregations. We're actually a mid-sized congregation, so it's not like all congregations, but we are a mid-sized congregation. Pre-pandemic, we were averaging 150 to 175 in worship, and we have about 275 people on roll, but had a decent amount of guests and visitors that came through the door, were regular attendees in worship. Since the pandemic, that's a hard thing to count these days on who's watching us online, as well as some of our in-person, but we are doing the same. And our congregation, while not racially diverse, is economically diverse. And so we have individuals who are very much blue collar workers, who are mechanics, a diesel mechanic, and custodian, and do those kind of jobs. And then we have folks who are school teachers. We have people who are secretaries, and scattered throughout, we have multiple small business owners, and then a couple folks, one or two lawyers, etc. And so we really run the gamut of individuals, and we run the gamut of age. We have folks who are we have a ruling elder right now who's 25, and we have a couple congregation members who are 100 years old. And so we really run the gamut as far as age goes. We have some families with children, and so we run it all. I would not say that there is any person in our congregation that is super, super wealthy. And On the other hand, we do have some folks who really live paycheck to paycheck within our congregation, and like many of you, perhaps this past year and a half, 2 years, has been not an easy one for them too. So we sort of run the gamut with that, and we have good involvement in the church, and we actually do a lot of things for our community. Actually, today we have a farmers market running in one of our parking lots, right across from where this picture is. We have several parking lots, and so we host a farmers market each week for our community. We also sponsor a community garden and sponsor several different, and by sponsor, I mean we actually run the community garden, and then we also support several local mission agencies as well, and work directly with them through that, do food bank things, and a lot of food ministry kind of things. And do host music programs for the community and other things like that too. So I would call us sort of typical of many congregations or mainline congregations and Presbyterian churches that you would find. And again, I came in 2001, so maybe unusual in the sense that the same pastor has been there now for 21 years.
So tell me then, how did you, the next slide I'm going to show you will be the numbers from Phil's church. This is what they've done with Giving Tuesday since 2016. How did you do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a really good question, actually. So I sort of lit on to Giving Tuesday actually in 2015, which when it was really very new, and noticed it. And as Robyn had shared, Giving Tuesday came out of this Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and back in 2012, and that Cyber Monday, a lot of folks actually did their buying at work because their internet stunk at home, and so that was a better way of getting things. And so we noted it in 2015 and did something very super small, just sort of congregationally. But in 2016 was when we really started pushing that. And we did a couple things that I think that really helped us out. One was we were really starting to move in and push into social media pieces as a congregation. We had a Facebook page. We were able to also do some newsletter pieces and things like that. And so we were on that end. And the other thing that we did almost right away in 2016 was, which was really important, was that we started what was a match. And so we worked right away with somebody beforehand and said, listen, if you put $1,000 into this, because I do have some people who have that, and if we raise $1,000, would you be willing to give that $1,000? And I explained sort of the philosophy behind why we were doing that and so on. And that sort of incentivizes folks giving, because then they're like, hey, if I get $10, then that gets another 10 in. And it's an achievable goal too. For this congregation and community. We never wanted to get a match that was so outlandish that we couldn't achieve it as a congregation. And so, and then we worked pretty diligently about communicating through social media, from the pulpit, in newsletters, emails, all of those things to advertise Giving Tuesday and let folks know how that happened. And so the first year was actually beyond our expectations. Our match, I think, the first year was actually only $500, and we quickly met that, and it grew from there. I would say the other thing that was super important in this for us was because Giving Tuesday was really based around online giving. we had already partnered with the Presbyterian Foundation to have an online giving platform. And so we were able to put that on our website and put it into our social media and get it out there. So much of the money that came through was through online, that people could do that on that Giving Tuesday. They could do it from work, they could do it from wherever they were, and they could give online. And so that was really important, because one of the things we realized as a congregation, even back in 2016 and before, was we needed to give as many different opportunities for people to give that they could. And so we didn't want to limit their opportunities. And we noted that more and more people were already moving to the electronic forms and electronic means of giving. So we really were moving in that direction. So we moved in the direction of online giving. But really importantly, a part of this was that we did not only online, but we did some other things as well. And that's how we got it started. I presented it to my session, and the session just totally took it. And so you see that match. That's where the pastoral piece came in for us. And so I talked with a couple congregation members about giving a match. And today, in the last 2 years, 3 years actually, I've asked 3 different congregation members to give money towards it. And so our match now is $5,000. So in 2018, which you see on the screen there, we had a $5,000 match that was there. And you see what we received in 2018. We did go down a little bit in 2019, but then popped back up in 2020, which is pretty good considering all that was going on in 2020 at that point in time as well. But that match was really important. We really still think it's an important piece. And the folks who were doing the match, they were thrilled to be asked to do the match. They thought it was such a good idea. They could see that their gift could be double by other people giving. And so it really was an incentive. And our congregation and community really wanted to not only meet that match, but they didn't want to let that money disappear. So people were going to do what it was necessary to give to make sure that we hit that $5,000 goal that we had. And so I've had known some folks in the congregation who might be willing and had the means with which to do it. You don't have to do $5,000, 500, 250, or 200, whatever. I do think a match is a good idea. It gives an incentive for people to give. And what we have done, sort of social media wise, text, whatever, all of those things, is the day of, we will give updated reports. Hey, we're at, halfway to our goal. We're 3/4 of the way to our goal. We're at our goal. Help us exceed our goal, whatever. And so, again, we use different means to publicize that as well.
So I think one of the things I'd love for you to all to pick up from this is that this is something that it's going to take some time. So unless you are a large church and you feel that you have a lot of capacity for giving on Giving Tuesday, you're probably not going to bring in 19,000 your first year out of the gate. You have to start. I'll go back to that slide. The extra 5,000 that they had in their budget at the end of the year was really nice for them. And it's now. They do put a lot of time and energy into it, but they have sort of a system. They figured out what works for them, and it takes some time to build. So just understand that as you're going into this. So in other words, if you do this year and you don't raise that much money, don't give up on it. Try it again, because it takes a while for things to stick. So
yeah, it really does. And as Robyn said, these are all the things we did. I did from the pulpit, we did in the bulletin, newsletter, emails, text alert, we have social media, and we're pretty regular about it. And we start early. If you start mid-November, you're not probably going to get a lot of response. And so we start as early as October to start getting the word out. I will have conversations with our donors again relatively soon about whether they're willing to give for the match again. It's really super important to sort of keep it in people's minds and to bring us to that point as well. And we let the community know too, and the community has given.
That's one of the things I think is really great, is that it's not just from those who are members of your church, that people in your community see the value that you bring to the community as a community touch point. I know that during the pandemic, you've offered testing facilities outside on your property. Is that right?
Yeah, yes. And so we do. We actually, once a week, we partner with Allegheny County to have COVID testing on our property as well. We, again, I talked about the farmers market that's there. We have a school that's right next door. When things shut down because of COVID, we actually did lunches to go for a while the school district was trying to get themselves up and going to get food to people. So we use our parking lots. We actually open it up for several different food trucks to come in and use that as well. And so we try to use our facility to serve the greater community. And things like the farmers market and the food trucks, we don't charge. We see it as a gift to them and to our community too.
Yeah, I think that's so one of the things that to think about is what kinds of stories are you going to tell that might motivate a member to contribute to a Giving Tuesday campaign. And one of the things I like about them, about Phil's church, is the announcements that they do and the way they use photos. These are some of the past Facebook posts. I know you can't read all the text, but you can at least get a sense of the kinds of things that they do. So pictures of people are great, because people look, particularly in a small congregation, you look to see, oh, is that someone I know? And if it's someone you know, you have a warm response to that. So these are all things that these are great for stewardship season as well. So these are all things that the church has done. And I imagine, Phil, you do a lot of work to get people to save those photos and get them to you so that you have them available.
Yeah, we do. We again, folks can find us online at First UP Church Tarentum, so you can see our social media presence and so on. But we work really hard, not only in worship, but in our different areas, to take pictures, to communicate with folks, because we really think that again, pictures say a lot more than words do. And so seeing the people, seeing what's going on, how we're working, the picture on your screen on the one side is the community garden we're working at, and the other side, when everybody's in the green shirts, is we do 2 mission trips a year down to West Virginia. I say down because we're in Pennsylvania, so we go down to West Virginia and serve with a place. And we have to date, we've done over 40 mission trips to West Virginia alone. And so folks know that, but they also know there's a support in that. And we know that not everybody can get to the garden, not everybody can go on mission trips to West Virginia, not everybody can do all of these things, but this is a way that they can be a part of what we are doing congregationally in and for our community and beyond.
Great. And here's a few more examples. And then they also do some nice graphics that motivate people to give. So in 2020, probably did not have photos of mission trips and things like that. So they went with some nicely styled graphics. And I'll tell you, one of the things I like about this, particularly from a logistical standpoint, is you can read the words Giving Tuesday really easily on mobile. You have to remember that the majority of people who are viewing your content in social media are doing it on their phone. So keep in mind, if you're using words on top of an image, You want the words to be fairly large, particularly if you're dealing with people who are my age. So upper 40s, you know how it is. You're holding your phone at arm's length trying to read stuff. So that's something you want to keep in mind. There are, yeah, and so people are going to definitely give online. As Phil mentioned, he also made ways for people to give in person. There were people who walked checks in the door, weren't there?
Yeah, and so we try to give as many different opportunities for Giving Tuesday. And I should say that one of the things that we say to folks on Giving Tuesday is we are really asking you to give, if you're a congregation member, to give over and above your regular giving. So, you know, the $10 you put in the plate on Sunday, we don't want you to not put that $10 in the plate. We're asking you to give an additional $10 for Giving Tuesday. But we try to give multiple opportunities for folks in different ways. So there's that online thing that a lot of folks love doing. They can just go on our website and click the link and boom, 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 done. We do cheat it a little bit and say on the Sunday before Giving Tuesday, if you want to do an additional Giving Tuesday, throw it in the collection plate, we'll take it that way. And not last year, obviously, we were totally shut down. We were working from home last year. So actually, that was maybe one of the reasons why we didn't get as much. We said that you could mail it in because we knew that we weren't going to be in the office. And then this year, hopefully we'll be in the office or whatever, and that folks walk it in. And we do have people, basically a slow stream of people all day long, because we know in our congregation that we have a portion of folks who give online, a portion of folks who insist on doing the collection plate, and which is not a bad thing. Week after week, we have folks who walk in their pledges every week or every month or once a year or whatever the case may be, and some folks mail it in. And so we want to give all of those options. By excluding one of those options, we are not giving people the opportunity to give. Many of my folks who are a bit younger than me, they don't carry cash. They don't do checks. None of my kids, all who are in college, they have checking accounts. They don't have checks. If we really want to get into it, we should probably be looking at other giving options like Venmo or something like that. I haven't really moved that. That's a little different, but nonetheless, again, as many different ways that we can give people the opportunity to give, we want to do that.
Absolutely. So one more thing, and then we're going to move into a time for questions. And I've got one question preloaded from someone who emailed me with a great question. One thing I want to just put in your thoughts is, when you're collecting stories to use on Giving Tuesday, they can be stories of how particular members of your congregation give back. They could be all kinds of examples of giving, particularly things that your church is involved in. But think about multiple ways to use those stories. So you get a photo. You always want to have a photo if you can, or a short video, even better. You get those, and then you can put a longer version, say in your newsletter, a little bit shorter in your bulletin if you're still printing a bulletin. You can put a version on your website. You can trim it down a little bit for Facebook. And then if you're using Twitter or Instagram, you can trim that story down even a little bit more. But think about posting the same content in different ways in different places, because they're not seeing all of those things. The people who are using Twitter probably aren't reading your newsletter. The people who are looking on your website may not be on Facebook. So you don't have to worry too much about repeating yourself. Just look at it as you're using that same material in a lot of different ways to hope that everyone sees it. Because that's the toughest part about communications right now, I think, is that audiences are so fractured. It used to be you put something in the newspaper, everybody in your town would see it. You announce something from the pulpit, everybody knew it. It's just not like that anymore. And we've got to get used to communicating with people in lots of different ways. So here's a great question that came in ahead of the webinar from someone who said they were with a church and they were reluctant to participate because they felt like they were going out to the congregation towards the end of the year, right after stewardship, right after their stewardship pledge season, with their hand out yet again. And it felt like too much to them. So I wonder how you would respond to that, Phil. How does that strike you? What would you say to that person?
Sure, it's a super good question. And actually, it was a similar question that we had when we first started doing Giving Tuesday from some folks on the session, because traditionally our Stewardship Sunday, right, is what, the second Sunday in November or something like that. I have to tell you that we actually don't do that anymore. We actually push ours up a little bit into October, but that it is a really good question. I think that the best way that I can answer it is that the stewardship season, or what you're doing, does dovetail actually into Giving Tuesday. So you can actually use that and move into Giving Tuesday. Here's an opportunity. We just talked about stewardship over this last month or 6 weeks or whatever. And here's a way that we can put this into practice now. So I think that that's one. And two, I go back sort of to the now and thing. And that is that we're not asking the folks because the chimney's broken or the lights might be turned off or something like that. We're inviting people to participate in this ministry and vision and so on. I do know some congregations who have picked something in particular for the monies on Giving Tuesday to go to. So instead of it just being sort of to the overall ministry and mission of the congregation, if you have one thing in particular that's super important to you, perhaps you do a homeless housing ministry or something like that, you could decide that your Giving Tuesday is around that thing in particular. So it's not just into the general budget per se, but it is something much more in a specific nature. And again, what I have found over and over again that is super remarkable in my congregation is that I have been hesitant at times to ask again for support of something, but yet when we do that, our congregation always steps up over and above. And so just a couple years ago, we made the decision that we would do all 4 denominational offerings. And I thought, man, we're really going to do our regular giving in, and it's going to do in our 1 great hour sharing that does really well. And so now we have all these other offerings. We're just not going to, it's going to reduce our budget and so on and so forth. In fact, that hasn't happened. And we have actually seen a higher giving percentage than into these other places too. So I think that, again, it's an opportunity. It's how we frame that opportunity for folks that's super important. And telling stories is really important. So if I tell a story of a family who comes to the community garden and what that means for them, that is a different way of putting it, other than, hey, we just have a match of $100 or $500 or $1,000 so you can keep the lights on. That's not going to get very far.
Right. So Todd Ryan has a great question for us in the chat. He'd like for you, Phil, to talk about how you developed where the money would go.
That's a good question. So 2 things. One is that when we build our church budget off of our stewardship season, we never include any monies from Giving Tuesday in our calculus. So because we just don't think that it's appropriate to do that. It's always over and above monies. And for us, the monies for Giving Tuesday, they're developed by the session, but the monies always go to outreach ministries of some sort. And so they are to things like to support our mission and a mission trip. So for example, going to West Virginia, we do two things. One is we always give over and above to the ministry that we're going to, because they typically have a pay piece. But we also say to the congregation, if you want to go on this trip, you can go. If you don't have the money to pay for this trip, we will pay for you. And so monies from our Giving Tuesday goes to something along those lines. It goes to our community activities that are like we have a fall festival for children and a Christmas and Easter things. And so it goes to that. Again, it goes towards our community garden and support of several other of our local ministry and mission pieces. We think that it's important that Giving Tuesday not just be about the fact, well, oh, the Girl Scouts come and use our church, and so therefore it goes to the electric bill. That doesn't really cut it.
Right. Yeah, it has to be more invitational than that.
Yeah. Todd, do you have a follow-up? Do you have more of a question with that? I mean, you can put it in the chat too if you want to.
So it's a kind of a brainstorming thing as part of a committee or the session?
Sure. Yes. Yeah, and sometimes it's after, but a lot of times it's before. What are the things that we're going to highlight in our stories, and what are the things that we have done, and how can this help us further? For example, I'm going to use the community garden a lot, but we can say we can double the number of raised beds that we have in the garden by doing this, so we can serve this many more families, and we know approximately how many families come into the community garden, those kind of things. And so it's a tangible piece to that. And we can also look back and say, look at the tomatoes, how many we had. And if it was a good season for tomatoes, which it was, but those kind of things as well. Yeah.
Robert has a follow-up question to that. Have you given people the opportunity to make a contribution to a certain part of ministry, or just into one big pot?
For us, we've done one big pot. We just, at some point in time, we need to trust that our, session and that folks can do good work, and they're not going to take money away and sock it somewhere. If people really insist that they would like to see it somewhere, that's fine. That's not a problem. But we really try to encourage the one pot thing, and we really try as a congregation to, just in general stewardship, to not divide things too much. We pretty much have a general operating giving, and that's where everything comes out of. And then we give a portion to mission and a portion obviously for salaries and maintaining that lovely structure that was finished in 1932 that now needs work. So
we would love to have more questions from you. Let's see. Oh, here's one from Scott. Is it Mueller? And by the way, you can unmute yourselves now and talk. We've turned that ability on, just not all at once. When did you say to start communicating about Giving Tuesday?
So, Scott, I think that for us, we start at least 6 weeks before Giving Tuesday. And so if Giving Tuesday, I think, is what, the 30th this year, is that right?
That's a good question. I think it is. Yeah.
Let's just say it is the 30th.
Thereabouts.
Yeah. So we're starting to at least put the toes in the water mid-October with a couple things, and then we sort of ramp up our Giving Tuesday stuff too. So at first it's maybe one or two social media posts a week. By towards the end, we're really doing something a lot more. It's not unusual on Giving Tuesday or just before Giving Tuesday that we'll flop a video up too. And so it's not just static pictures, but I'll run down to the community garden and I'll use the iPhone and say, hey, I'm live at da 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 da. Look, we still have, spinach in the garden, and because of your support, Giving Tuesday gives us that opportunity. And so the video thing helps every once in a while with folks too. It's just another means of connecting, and usually on Giving Tuesday itself, I'll pop on for a live video or a video that we share on Facebook in midday. That just says, thanks for all those who've walked in. The office is still open till 5 o'clock tonight, that you can come, da 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 da. We don't want to miss you. You can go online. You can see in the down below, here's our website, so on and so forth. So we just think that because, among other things, we always have to remember the algorithms, unfortunately, of Instagram, Facebook. They like videos. They like pictures. They don't like words. So
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the more you vary the tools you use, such as going live, Facebook likes for you to go live. They will tell your followers and your friends from your church's page or your group, whatever you have, they will alert them, oh, Phil's, the First United's going live, and that will send you traffic. Because the way Facebook pushes stuff out is, it's a bit of a mess, honestly. So people may not see your very well-intentioned post with a photo until it's past Giving Tuesday. So that's another thing to think about, is putting a little bit of money, even just $20, and boosting a post will really help you.
Sure.
So,
and
more questions?
I have to say too, I have a lovely congregation member who does 99.9% of our social media. And so it's not all on me. But we do get together and we do put together particularly a social media plan, particularly for Giving Tuesday stuff, because it's important to have a plan of when we post and all those things, and we try to follow it. So we put some good effort into it. If you're going to put in a little bit of effort, you're probably going to get a little bit of stuff. Remember that scripture,
Yeah. Do we have any more questions? We're happy to answer them. Have any of the folks here who are representing churches or ministries, have you participated in Giving Tuesday before? Have you had success with it?
I'm gonna,
go ahead.
Can I speak? This is
go ahead.
Cynthia Blumgard from Montclair Presbyterian Church in Oakland, California.
Oh, yeah.
And this is our first, I'm actually a new stewardship chair, and I have been on the finance committee for several years. And this kind of got tossed to me, and I'm real excited about it. But we're still actually not meeting in person. We're meeting outside in our courtyard, not in our church.
Sure.
So we are. I'd say we're doing better than limping along, but it's challenging, and we have probably half of our congregation physically there, and over half are not. So in doing a rollout, because this will be the first year we do Giving Tuesday, I'm just wondering about this idea of targeting the money, since we're going to reopen and things will change. And I'm wondering if you always targeted the money, or what you think about a general, just putting our toes in the water to see and try to do as much as I can, and then maybe doing more designated in the future. So did you ever do a general appeal, or did you always target it?
So for us, I mean, I would say that it's targeted, but it's also a general appeal at the same time, because we think that what I mean by that is we are always, the monies goes towards the mission and ministry, the outreach pieces of the congregation and so on. But that's also general, because we do a lot of outreach pieces. And so we can do more general in nature, like look at these kids, this is what we do, look at this is what we do, look at this is again. So general is fine. I just would point 1,000 times, do not say that it's to keep the lights on and the the flames burning or whatever the case may be. It is much more important to say something like, in this year of transition, as we come back, our small group ministries are so vitally important to us and to the community, and therefore this helps for curriculum, it helps for possible vacation Bible school, whatever the case may be, that's there. And so that's a much more important, a better way of potentially going about doing that. And so general's fine. There's nothing wrong with general, but if we're saying that it's general because our budget's 200,000 and we're at 160 for the year, and we don't think that we're going to make 200,000 by the end of the year, that's not a good way to do Giving Tuesday.
We've learned, we've been having appeals, and this idea is very tempting because it consolidates the asks all through the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. We have a good question from Greg French. When you announce successful responses to the invitations to participate during the day on Tuesday, are you able to real-time track gifts made online through the foundation giving portal?
Well, Robyn probably can answer that question better than I can, but at least as far as I know, every time we get a gift on the giving portal, we get an email into the church, and so our financial secretary is able to follow that. I don't see that personally, but we follow that as well. I do want to make clear too that with our giving and Giving Tuesday, it's not like 10 people gave $19,000. We are getting a good number of individuals, sometimes as many as 75 to 100, who have given. And so it's not just the fact that we had a match of 5,000 and somebody walked through the door and gave 10 or something. We really have, and we run the gamut. I'm not going to tell you that we don't get a $2,000 gift in, because we sometimes do, but we also get 10 and 15 and 20 and 100 or whatever the case may be gifts, because we think that in the end, participation in this event also moves us in a good ministry mission fashion. And so I'm going to value the $10 that comes in from somebody as much as I'm going to value the 2,000 that comes from somebody else, because they are participating and want to be a part of this. And so we celebrate not just the dollar amount, we tend to celebrate, that we received gifts from 78 different giving units in the, from the, or whatever the case may be, because we think that that's important too.
I think that's great. That to me is a better success than having 5 people giving larger sums of money. I love the idea of 75 to 100 people being motivated to give on one day. I mean, that's pretty great, because if you think about it, there's a fair amount of competition for Giving Tuesday, and the fact that they're choosing to give to their church over the other organizations that may be soliciting them, I think speaks well of the church, and it speaks well of the invitation that you have issued to them. I think that's great.
Yeah. And so we really try to acknowledge that too, right? We try to acknowledge the folks who give and so on, and how important that is overall. So if the kid wants to give I know last year they did it outside, so it was safe, but last year one family in our congregation did a hot chocolate stand, and got the money and then they gave it on Giving Tuesday. And so those children
Oh, wow.
participated in the hot chocolate, they sold the hot chocolate. They had lots of people came in, and then they continue to do that. So they continue to have done, lemonade stand, that kind of thing. And so it's really important. And I will acknowledge that there are lots of pushes and pulls from lots of different, every single nonprofit knows about Giving Tuesday now. And so it is a little bit harder than before. When we first started, and even in 2019, where you saw our totals, that we weren't as in big a competition as we potentially are now, with all of the other things. And I acknowledge that. We always say, Giving Tuesday's coming. We don't necessarily, if you have monies to give, we want you to support other things that you're passionate about too. We hope you're passionate about the ministries and mission of First United Presbyterian Church. But if you're passionate about whatever, my mom does a lot of work with folks with epilepsy. So, I'll probably give to the Epilepsy Foundation on Giving Tuesday, because that's really super important to me. So same things.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I try to, my wife and I, but we also give on Giving Tuesday over and above our giving. I mean, if I'm not doing it, it's really hard to ask the congregation to do it if I'm not doing it.
You leading by example. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So someone had asked about the date for Giving Tuesday. So the date this year, I did look it up. It is November 30th. Yeah. You really don't want to vary from it, because if you do, it's going to be confusing to your audience. Giving Tuesday is well established enough that it's not that you couldn't, but it could potentially confuse people. So I would stick with it if you at all can. Plus, honestly, you want it really closer to Thanksgiving than to Christmas, because as your church gets deeper into the Advent season, it just gets busier, I think. So.
It does. It's a good time. I mean, I think Giving Tuesday is a good timing. I like that it's November 30th this year. It was harder last year when it was in December, honestly. Yeah. It works well with things. I think there's a thankful piece to it too that comes out of the Thanksgiving that you can always, be a part of in that as well. So, and again, we have not seen diminished giving because of our Giving Tuesday. It's not like we get less money in for the Christmas joy offering, less money in for just folks regular giving, etc. It tends to be over and above.
Right. One other bonus that you will see if you don't have online giving set up, if you do set that up, one of the things you might see, particularly among younger generations, is they tend to set up an online recurring gift. And that's honestly how I do all of my charitable giving. All of it is set up to be recurring gifts. So the first of the month, it all goes straight to my credit card. I turn around and pay it straight out of my checking account. The credit card's just easier. And as folks, I always appreciate that, because that gift is going to go on for a long time. I mean, I think there's one of them I set up maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't think I've ever even really given it a whole lot of thought. Like, it was something I believed in. I set it up. It's done. It's a sort of a set it and forget it, which I know that's not really what we're aiming for with church, but in terms of giving, it makes it very, very simple. And I think that's something that you might see separate and apart from Giving Tuesday.
Yeah, and I'm going to just dovetail really quickly, because I know our time is basically up. 2 things. One is, folks, you can reach out to me personally. I do not mind. You can find in my, I'm First UP Church Tarentum on the Facebook, but also the church website is fupct.org. That's really easy, fupct.org, First United Presbyterian Church Tarentum.org. and my email address is on there, so you can always email. And I'd be happy to walk through things with you. I'd even be happy. I'm going to be working with a friend locally here to do some Giving Tuesday stuff with her finance, stewardship, finance committee, whatever. I can do some virtual stuff for you. I'm happy to do that with and for you if you would want that as well. So that's one piece. Now I'm going to try to remember the second piece that I was going to say too. Oh, right. The online giving. If you do have that, like, it's super awesome to have that for Giving Tuesday, because it's an easy first way for people to come in, right? And so once they've worked out the like technology piece, then it's less intimidating. So then when they go maybe to start doing online giving or whatever, or if you do that again, it becomes less intimidating because they've done it before. And so it's an easy entrance into doing that. And what we found is people who did Giving Tuesday and then said, well, we want to do online giving. We're like, well, you already did it once. This is all you have to do this time. You can actually set up an account and do this and that, and so on and so forth. And so it's super easy for folks. We're coming to the point, this is not Giving Tuesday. We're actually in conversation in our congregation about what to do about collection plates. We've started going back to passing them again a little bit, but we have so many people that are now doing online giving or doing bill pay or whatever the case may be, that it looks like nobody's giving any money in the collection plates anymore. And so we're thinking maybe we're just going to put it back in the narthex again and let people just plunk in the money that way, so that folks are and the nice thing about that, again, as Robyn says, this is not Giving Tuesday, but just in general, is we know that every month, no matter what, we're going to get approximately this many dollars from these people, through that online giving. We actually, full confession, we actually don't do online giving through the foundation. My wife and I do it as a bill pay through our checking account. So my bank sends a check to the church once a month.
And that's actually how I give to my church. It's just a little bit simpler for me. Yep. But yeah, and I, as Phil says, I'm available to you as well. My very favorite thing in the world is to talk to churches, and if I can answer any questions for you, I'm happy to do it. I'm Presbyterian. I attend a church in Louisville. I've been chair of session at my church. Stewardship, not session. And so I have some experience. These are challenging times, but I want to leave you with this. Last year, which was of course a year of enormous challenges and a lot of grief and sadness, we saw the largest amount of giving we had seen in decades here. That people were being very, very generous to their local congregations, to ministries they loved. And I think what this says is that people, when times require people to step up, they do. And when they're asked to give, they will. And they feel blessed to be able to do so, as Phil shares about people giving to the match. So I know sometimes it's hard to put ourselves out there to ask people to give over and above their gifts, or to even meet the pledges they've already made. But people expect the question. They're honored when you think that they have capacity to do so, and they're excited to lead the way. It's not universally true, but in many cases it is. So this is the kind of thing, Giving Tuesday, if you've not done it before, I'll be very interested to hear how it goes for you, and if there's anything we can do to help set you up for success. Because I think it's really something you can take advantage of. And one last plug, you could, if you wanted to, also set up sort of a bucket for special offerings for gifts to the mission agency. They do a great deal around Giving Tuesday to promote gifts to special offerings and to the mission agency. That's part of why I wanted to have this webinar in September, so that this would not be confused with their efforts for Giving Tuesday and for fundraising. But there are, you could choose to do that as well. And I think that's important and needed as well. So please feel free to reach out to Phil or I after this webinar. The webinar will be recorded. We're going to push out also some resources we're going to send you probably by the end of the week that you can use. And that'll include some templates for social media posts and all kinds of things. And it should be really great. And I hope it's useful for you. So
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Here, do the Zoom wave.